Hello, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to show you how to animate the eyebrow for Grommet in Dreams. So right now I'm working on creating the train sequence in Dreams. So one of the major characters is Grommet, and I am going to show you how I make him. So I start off with a sphere, stamp it, duplicate it, and then scale it down to about, 80% or 87 or something like that. And then I go up like this and kind of align it. Make sure everything is aligned. So his head is kind of like a bean shape. And then I duplicate this shape, scale it down here. And that gives us the kind of neck area of his head. So I adjust it a little bit so that it's more bean shape. And making sure those lines are aligned. Alright. I'm not sure if I duplicate anything further than that. Maybe I do. But I want to get a nice kind of bean shape. And then after that, I press triangle and then make it really small and create the eye socket area. So that's one, that's two, and then I add another one overall like that. And this will be like the base of his head approximately. Like I would use reference to make sure like it's accurate, but this looks kind of like a grommet head. And yeah. So then I scope out, add another sculpt, and his nose is just a sphere on top of the bean shape. So let's add his nose. I don't know if it's that big. Again, I would use reference to know exactly. So that's his nose, and then we'll do his eyes. So Artman animation, they use beads for the eyes for the animation. But in Dreams, we're using virtual kind of beads. So it's not actually physical beads. So I'm just going to scope in and then paint it a white color and select black for his pupils. So we'll just place it like that, and then using precise move, I duplicate it and kind of move it across, and they do kind of overlap with each other, kind of like that. So that's a good start, I think. And I'll add a shininess to the nose, make it kind of darker, and then make his head like it's not exactly white, but it's kind of like a plasticine yellowy kind of tint to it. And this is the base of his head, more or less. And the eyes are also shiny, so we'll make it a bit shinier, and yeah. So the atmosphere feels really dreams-like, so we don't want it to feel like dreams. So I add a sun and sky, turn off the visibility of the sun, turn this up a little bit, and for the sky, I go with like a grey colour, turn this tint all the way up, turn down the horizon definition, and turn down the fleck shade randomness. And I like to select like a neutral kind of grey. And the sun color, maybe I'll just make it kind of warm, like the stop motion kind of lighting. And for this, I'll make it kind of blue, because I want to work in a space that feels like I'm working in Autodesk Maya or something. So once the environment is changed, I then add the lights in, hold it and press triangle to realign it, drag this up and put it right above his head. And right now the lights by default are extremely harsh, so my setting for it is turning down the brightness to about, really low, maybe 4%, turning down the beam range so that it doesn't touch the ground, and then turning up the beam angle and the fade angle and making it subtle to feel a bit more like natural. And I'm gonna set up a 3-point lighting system. So there's one that comes in from this direction, from the side, and then we have backlighting. So we have some backlights, the bounce light from the key, like that. I might also make the color blue to kind of match the blue here. And then we get a rim lighting from this side as well. Or like an area kind of lighting. That's the key to all of it, is having really good kind of lighting. And Dreams, fortunately enough, has a really good lighting system. So I might just place this light in a way where it gives us the shadows and all of that. So right now the grommet sculpt is really inaccurate. It doesn't feel like grommet to me, but it will be good enough to demonstrate like the eyebrow kind of animation. So after when everything is set up, I then go to search, and I have on my profile a timeline called the 12 frames per second or 24 frames per second timeline. It's a traditional timeline, so I'm just going to drag this in. You can find it in the Dreamiverse, but I'm going to drag it in and select the 12 frames per second timeline. And this gives us a frame snapping of 12 frames within a second. So it took me quite a bit to figure out how to do this timeline, but I figured it out, and you can now use it in Dreams. It basically turns Dreams into Adobe Flash or Toon Boom Animate or something like that, but you have 3D capability here. I'm gonna go ahead and freeze the background. Under Tools, Freeze, so that I can't move it. I'll also freeze the lights in place, and also I might hide the sun and sky. You know what, I'll hide the lights as well, if that's possible. I can't hide it. But yeah, we'll drag the timeline down here, maybe scale it up so it's easy to scope in. And I'll pin this to the screen and kind of move it up to the corner. Pin this as well and just make it really small because we don't really need this one. We need this one. So that is our setup and we're ready to animate. So before we start, I might make a few more little tweaks just so it feels more like Grommet. And I'm going to group everything together like that. Now to do his eyebrow, you want to scope into the base and then select curve. Press, let's just make sure you are in the stamp shape. So by default, something I forgot to mention is like dreams by default, if you're dream shaping and you go to tools, it's by default set to smear shape, which is something that you don't really want because if it is set to smear shape and you go into sculpting, like if you go into the sculpting tools, it's automatically set to smear, so we don't want that. And to make it stamp shape, you have to go to tools, go to stamp shape, and then you have the stamp shape, which is kind of tedious. So I recommend going to your preferences, going to dream shaping, go to tools, and then select the stamp shape because that's what we're going to be working with. So now each time you go into the sculpt mode, it will automatically be set to stamp, which is what we want. So you don't have to go to tools and switch between these. It's all automatic. So what I do is I scope into the base, and to do his brow I use a curve tool. And I scale it so that it's as thick as his eyeball. And that's like a rule that I've made to keep everything consistent here. So we'll go with a neutral kind of expression, but right now you can see that the curve is not blending with the base. So if you hold down L1 and square, you can turn up the blend amount to however much you want. I usually go with like halfway because it's not too soft or it's not too harsh. It gives you enough to work with. So I go in all the way to around until you can't really see the curve anymore. And then hold L1 and square. Drag it across to the other side until it's kind of inside like this. And then with the middle ones, I kind of drag them out like this so that I get a nice kind of eyebrow. And we'll go with a neutral kind of expression here for his eyebrow. And you can see, like, if you play around with it, you get a few different poses. Like, you get a surprise kind of pose. But if you watch the films, the eyebrow, it moves really subtly. It's the only thing on his face that moves. Sometimes his nose, like, kind of squishes up, and then his eyebrows kind of move side to side. I mean, his eyeballs move side to side. But most of the movement, most of the expression is with this eyebrow, and the curve tool allows us to have something really expressive. So once we have, the expression, I then stamp it in place. So stamp in place, and there you go. You have an eyebrow And then with this, I then drag this out to kind of create the fill in that seam. Or you can also duplicate parts of the back, scale it down, and then kind of put it where that hole is. So it's like getting a little bit of extra plasticine and filling up that space. So now there's an eyebrow. And the key to it is being able to create multiple frames and keep it consistent. So here we know how to create the eyebrow, so now we just repeat the same process again. We scale it down so that it's eyeball width, adjust the blend amount to about halfway, and then kind of move it in towards the temple area, L1 square, drag it across, and then in the middle, kind of drag it out. So it's repeating, it's a process where it's simple enough so that we can repeat it. And then I stamp it in place, and then you get another frame that's kind of similar. But here's the thing, like you can scope in to an overlapping kind of frame. Like if I lock this and now I drag it on top, whatever I select now, it will be that frame that's needs to be modified. So you can hide the visibility, hide everything else, and it's kind of like onion skinning. So now you see the onion skin. So I just go in and pretty much repeat that process where it's eyeball width, hide everything, and then create an extreme pose. So I'll make the blend amount halfway again. So I need like him to be surprised on this pose. So I drag this out. So a surprise expression would be up like this. And this is an extreme. Then I stamp it in place and we'll check out what's happening. So now we have the neutral expression, which is frame 1, and then this is like point B. And then from here, you can also further, adjust it so that it's a little bit more on model. But there are some extra things that I would change. Like I probably drag this out a little bit more so that it feels more smooth. Like there's a lot of work that goes into it. And then here I might drag this out so that it fills in that gap. So how do we do an in-between pose? Well, it's easy. You just duplicate it so that it's in between the two extremes. So frame 1, frame 2. And then scope in and delete whatever that brow was, move it back and reset the base. And kind of add in another brow. So blend them out halfway, about as thick as his eye. Keep it all consistent. and then L1 square, drag it across. And now we're going to do a pose that's in between this one and this one. So I'm gonna move this out like this. And then this feels like this one, but we need to get to this one. So I'm gonna do something like one eyebrow goes up first before the other one does. So something like that as the in-between. So once I have that, I can then drag this out to fill in that seam. And now I have a pose that's in between these two. But let's ease it. So I drag this one out, duplicate this one, and then we're going to ease in from this one to this one. So it's going to be a little bit more like this one. So to ease, you don't really have to edit it that much. You can just kind of move it somewhat. So that is kind of like between this and then this. So that's how you can kind of ease it. And then same thing with this side. It needs to move from here to here. So I might make it kind of anticipate down. And then it goes up. And then from here, there's a little thing called follow through. So then what you want to do is have a follow through pose. So this one might go up a little bit. We'll move this across and we'll move this one up just a little bit. So then it kind of pops up and then settles down. So then we have an anticipation, and in between pops up and then it settles down. So once we have everything in place, I then select all of the frames, hide everything, and now you can't really select anything, but we can bring it back up by go show and hide, preview invisibility, and then from here with the timeline up the top, I just L1X and turn on the visibility of each frame. So we're not animating the position, we're just animating the visibility. And yeah, that's it. And then in this, I pretty much just select all of the frames that adjust the visibility, and move it in the middle. And then drag the first frame and the last frame to fill in that empty space. So we're holding the frames. So now if I go preview invisibility, it'll glide jump through the frames like that, but it's not aligned. So what we do to align it is use precise move and kind of move it back so that all of it is together again. There's another way of doing this with logic that I'm experimenting with, but if you want like higher quality, this is what you got to do. You got to move it back into place. And it will be jiggly a little bit, but yeah. So now I just go loop and then just check out what's happening. So yeah, you can see that his eyebrow kind of moves up like so. But it kind of feels stiff. So what I do is nest the animation. So I double click on it so that it selects all of it and then group it. So now you can move the head around. So as a quick demonstration, I go action recorder. Let's turn off the precise move for a second. And now you can move the head and the expression stays on the head. So that's just like a quick demo. But since we're doing like a stop motion kind of aesthetic, I like to go in and then press R3 and think about the head pose when he like moves down. So I might add a keyframe here. And we'll drag it to match the beat. And then make his head go down a little bit. Copy the previous frame. Make it go down a little bit more. And this is like an in-between. So I'm pretty much straight ahead animation, like moving the puppet. And then I might drag this one out to go into the settle kind of pose here. So then this one, I'll drag this. So it adds a little bit more kind of life to the head movement. So now you get something that moves along with the expression and accentuates the movement. So you get something a bit more natural looking. And then on top of it, what you can do, like as an extra layer of like detail, what I like to do, since stop motion has these imperfections, like signs of the artist going in and kind of molding the kind of clay around, I like to go in and add these kind of fingerprint indentations on to the model. So I scrub through each frame and then kind of add in these little, you know, these points of tension where the artist would have gone in and kind of molded the clay to go up and down or something like that. So this is like an extra level of like detail that I add in later. And it's these little imperfections that add a bit more life to it to make it have a more stop motion-y kind of feel. So now it looks like someone has gone in and kind of molded the clay around. So it has like the imperfections of stop motion. So that's just like an extra little detail, like an extra little bit that I want to add later in the animation. But that's basically how I animate the eyebrow. So I hope this video is useful in some kind of way, breaking down my process on how to animate like stop motion in dreams. But yeah, go check it out because I've spent quite a bit of time developing this timeline, and it's really, really useful for stuff like this. So go check it out. I'm not really sure when I'll be able to finish the actual train sequence from Wallace and Gromit, but I do have like an animatic set up so far. I'm just gonna exit and don't save whatever I did. But I have been going in and creating assets for the short. And I'm just going in, watching the film over and over again and trying to recreate all of those assets. But yeah, right now I'm just experimenting and trying a few things out to see if I can actually do it. So the only thing that's kind of worrying me at the moment is the thermometer and trying to fit it all into one scene. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.